Kathy saying hello.
Hello.
Meow.
She
That's cat for hello.
does.
Duncan, are we starting at Pineapple Rock?
You are correct.
Okay.
Yes.
I missed last week, or maybe 2 weeks. Where are we in the Dabbler?
In the Gabbler. I know how to find that pretty easily.
Away from that light.
Gabbler, we read we read
Yeah,
Olus last week.
it's page 124 in Gabler. Lester.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you, Katrina.
Thank you.
124. Oh, we're okay. We're up
24.
till Lestragonians. Excellent. Thank you.
Right. And Dave Little, are you actually here?
He's hiding.
Great.
Yes.
I'm
He's actually
eating
here.
my lunch. I'm sorry.
That's
why
fine.
I-
You can go behind the curtain again. I just wanted to make sure you were
But
here.
I am definitely here.
Okay. Well, you have you're the sixth reader, so you can enjoy your lunch and you'll read after Lois.
Sounds good. Are we doing a kind of a final wrap on Aeolus, or is that in the rear view mirror at this point?
I will tell you that I was going to go and review the video from last week to see what we had decided. And then I got a call from my daughter who has COVID. And so my attention got switched.
All right.
If you remind me of what we said we were going to do,
I
that's
think
what
Dave is correct. I think you yourself, Duncan, were anxious to have a review of the reading.
Yeah.
That's right.
Okay.
Mhm.
We didn't decide really, but that's what it was kind of left as a possibility.
Okay, so
So-
let me just mention that for those of you who are watching this on YouTube, the YouTube live video, we're going to have some discussion about the chapter that we read last week, Aeolus, the chapter that mainly takes place in the newspaper office. And after our discussion of that, we will move on to the next episode, Lestragonians. So.
Okay.
With that, I ask the first person to say something about Aeolus.
Well, I have always found Aeolus to be confusing to me because there's so many men and I get them mixed up. And that's true for me in some of the other chapters too. What you might think of as minor characters, but maybe they're not so minor. So I found something that I liked online called UlyssesGuide.com. And it just spelled out who's who. And that was helpful to me. It goes through every chapter of Ulysses, but I went to the Aeolus chapter, UlyssesGuide.com.
Okay. Maybe sometime today you can just type that in the chat.
I will. I'll do that. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah,
Well,
and
good.
Anna put up last week a Wikipedia list of characters, which I find very helpful because I get totally confused. I can't keep them straight.
Right.
And then they're all mixed up with Dubliners now. I mean,
Good point.
they're not all, but some.
Yes, well, and actually some of them some of the names are also in doublers, but not necessarily the same personalities. You know, just to make it even more interesting.
Oh. Okay.
Well, let's see if I wrote down anything interesting here. I know I made a bunch of notes last time.
Well, while you're looking, I mean, I would just say that, of course, the first time many years ago that I read Ulysses, you're just struggling to keep your head above water because you're having so much thrown at you. And I mean, it's the beauty of the book because I think this is probably my 8th time through, and I maybe got 10%. I mean, this is the gift that keeps giving.
Yeah.
Where I'm going with this was I had no idea about what he was doing in the Aeolus chapter until I read Stuart Gilbert's book. And he talks about the rhetorical devices that are being employed here. And then when you know that and you go through, And I think the first one's the chiasmus about the beer barrels getting rolled from the drayman down into the basement, and and I love the chapter for that, but I missed it. I have to be honest, I missed it first time through. And as I said last week, if you're a language geek, this twins up with the Oxen of the Sun chapter. And I think there are some strong correlations if you're sort of besotted by the English language as I am, and this is why I love the chapter.
Could I just add to what Dave has said there? I may have said this last week, but the parallel between this chapter and the Aeolus chapter in the Odyssey, I think, is very strong. We know that Aeolus is king of the wind and the storms, and they're with the help of Aeolus. Odysseus and his pals are heading back home to Ithaca, and they're almost within sight of the land. They can see fires burning on the headlands, and his crew get anxious and irritated about this bag of wind that Aeolus had given to Ulysses. And they open it while Ulysses is having a power nap. And of course, they let loose all the storms and get blown all the way back to Aeolus. So I think how this is paralleled in the chapter is we see a lot of wind exposed by the various characters, and they're loud and they're bombastic and there are lots of them. So I just throw that into the pot.
Well, that's a very important piece in the whole thing. Because of course, on one level, this chapter is kind of a big joke.
Yeah.
On these men who think they're extremely erudite.
Yeah.
And that they are providing the accurate information to the nation, sort of thing. And they're just full of wind. And they're blowing themselves around all over the place.
And
would it be prescient of Joyce that he knew somewhere in his mind about Bob Dylan and blowing in the wind?
Yeah.
There are those who appreciate that sort of thing.
Just thought of a rabbit hole.
And there are those who would say that actually that Bob Dylan had probably read Ulysses, and that's where he got it.
Yeah.
Except that I'm not sure there are many answers here blowing in the wind.
Yes, that's true. As a matter of fact, it's exactly the opposite. It's largely nonsense.
Well, he's got the history, the editor has got the history mixed up. On the Wordsworth chapter, the bottom of page 113, he says, "Not Cork militia," the editor cried, striding to the mantelpiece. "We won every time. Not Cork and Spanish officers." Well, anytime the Spanish came to Ireland, it was with a view to fighting the British, whereas the North Cork militia was actually a regiment of yeomanry in the British Army. And they were quite notorious. And if anyone has heard of the 1798 rebellion in Wexford, they were instrumental in stirring it up because of their cruelty to their fellow Irishmen. So North Cork militia and Spanish officers would definitely not be on the same side.
Well, I'm from Texas, and Texas is very good at manufacturing its history to hear what it wants to hear.
Okay.
And actually, the true history of the Alamo is a case in point that the most accepted version of the Alamo is not from a historian at all. It's the John Wayne version, the story of the Alamo. And there are major fights within Texas where real historians try to point out what utter nonsense the John Wayne version is. So
made for a good movie, though.
Yeah.
Oh yes.
Yeah, that's interesting, Duncan, because I actually, naive as I might sound, I did think the John Wayne version was more or less the genuine version.
Welcome to the modern age.
Right.
Regardless of what's taught in the schools,
Right.
the histories that most people have in their heads have something to do with movies they've seen.
True.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what's the saying? Don't let the truth stand in the way of a good story, right?
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Particularly if it pumps you up.
For sure. You know, back to the windiness in this chapter. What is interesting is to do an inventory of people here who are actually working. And it doesn't take long, because as far as I
Nobody's
can see, well, exactly, it's probably the shortest list of the book, because as far as I can see, it's Bloom, Nanetti, and I think it's Red is the name of the guy who's working in the pay office, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Oh,
beyond that,
somebody.
I don't know. So that's, I mean, less than one hand there, three people. There may be others, but nobody's really working here except those three.
Yeah.
And Bloom gets slighted because he's actually trying to work, and they keep kind of fluffing him off.
Right. Right. And I think a big part of that is the fact that the head of the newspaper, somebody remind me of his name.
Miles Crawford?
Okay, is drunk.
Right.
I mean, that's why all these ne'er-do-wells and slackers show up at the newspaper office,
Right.
because they know that Miles is already drinking, and that at a certain point they're all going to march off to a bar or a pub, and you even have people like Linehan, who probably never bought a drink in his life.
No.
But he cages drinks because he tells good stories, and he's got his fake French jokes. He's the one that's always, parlez-vous, monsieur, sort of stuff. Um, and so, they don't begrudge him a couple of drinks. So he probably comes every day. And then there's the whole thing where Stephen is being offered a job by Miles Crawford. And I think that part of the purpose of Aeolus is to show why Stephen Dedalus would never want to really work in a newspaper office. Although the joke is that in Trieste, he wrote quite a few articles that were published in small political newspapers when he was trying to eke out a living and do some writing at the same time while teaching English.
A word about the headlines. So, and this is partly statement, partly a question, but like, do they get wackier and wackier as the chapter progresses? They do. Okay, not just me. All right.
And these were late entrants as well.
They were. That's right.
After the text was written.
Yeah. In fact, is it possible, Donna, that there was some publication that happened, and then he went back and revised it for the final volume, or
I don't know that.
I don't either. Actually,
yeah. I'm sure that question is answered somewhere.
Probably, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, let's look just for an example. The first headline in the chapter is "In the Heart of the Iberian Metropolis."
Right.
The last headline is "Diminished digits prove too titillating for frisky frumps, and Wimple's flow wrangles. Yet can you blame them?" So one might propose that the final headline is pretty wacky.
Right.
That's what we would call a red top headline here. If you have a similar thing in the US, where we have these newspapers that go in for the scandalous and the scurrilous at all times.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I do love the two headlines though, KMA and KMRIA. That's still used here in this country, particularly in a public house.
So would people use the abbreviations? Do people go around saying KMA?
No,
No, of
they,
course not.
they,
No.
they use the
Oh.
full phrase. Yeah.
Sure.
I think I'm repeating something I mentioned last time that we're going to have a very interesting contrast between the type of language, of course, there's rhetoric and all that, but the language here that all these guys are using, except for Stephen's the parable of the plum, is very abstract, very high flown. Although, as you say, wacky and weird and all that. And then immediately when we get to Lestrygonians, it's all kinds of real details. It's like in Aeolus, we're blowing around in the sky, taking these abstract views of the earth. I don't think it's an accident that the two ladies climb up to the top of the pillar and look down on Dublin. Although Stephen Dedalus is trying to get a bit more earth in the conversation in his thing. And then as we start Lestrygonians, we plummet right into everyday earthy details and start bouncing around in real stuff. Okay.
I think as well, just before you go on, Duncan, in Lestrygonians, just glancing through it here, a lot of that takes place in Leopold Bloom's head. It's very much a stream of consciousness in comparison to what we've had in the previous episode.
Mm-hmm.
Point.
Suggests to me that it's his thought process, it's what he's thinking, what he's imagining. And as we had seen, say, in the Proteus episode, where, Stephen was doing the very same thing. You can imagine whatever you like, but you can't change reality.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So just before we go to Lestrygonians, I've never really known quite how to take the parable of the plums. Is it the arch that takes us from Aeolus into Lestrygonians because we're talking about concrete food, or is there another reason he put? Is he trying to, Stephen trying to show these guys that I don't write your kind of news? I'd sure be welcome for any insights there because it's always really puzzled me.
I'm puzzled by it,
Okay.
but I think you're pretty much correct when he's basically telling all these journalists that this is a story that I like, because even when he's telling the story, let's see if I can find some examples where as he starts the stories, I mean, compared to what the other guys have been talking about, these women are described in pretty good detail.
Right.
And there's a lot of physicality in this,
Yes, it's true.
as opposed to their windbaggy abstractness. That's just my opinion.
No, it's good. Good. Thank you.
I still expect, I actually am, this is probably my 8th reading as well. I kind of tried to count it the other day, but I am sure on my 16th reading, I will still be discovering all kinds of stuff that and it'll be like, okay, fine. This is the way it works. It is such a complex, intricate piece of work that you just can't get it all, even in under 10 readings.
I'll say one little thing about your question, Dave, that because I get into symbolism, there are a lot of arcs in the book and a lot of throwing things, like Bloom throws bread, in the Liffey. Molly throws a coin out to someone out of the window, and there's an arc when the men are urinating, all these
Hmm.
arcs, and this is like just one more arc. Now, what that means, I don't know, but it's a motif that I've noticed.
Thank you.
Yeah, other examples is Bloom thinking about his neighbor with the ample hips whacking, the rugs out in the backyard, and then when the
Yeah.
girl is leaving the butcher shop and her hips are swaying back and forth, and
Oh.
he wants the butcher to hurry up. I got important stuff to do here. All right, are we ready to go to Lestrygonians?
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, on we go. Pineapple Rock, lemon plat, butterscotch. A sugar sticky girl shoveling scoopfuls of creams for a Christian brother. Some school treat. Bad for their tummies. Loge and comfort, manufacturer to His Majesty the King. God save our. Sitting on his throne, sucking red jujubes white. A somber YMCA young man, watchful among the warm, sweet fumes of granum lemons, placed a throwaway in the hand of Mr. Bloom. Heart-to-heart talks. Blue me? No. Blood of the Lamb. Next.
His slow feet walked him riverward, reading, "Are you saved? All are washed in the blood of the Lamb. God wants blood victim, birth, hymen, martyr, war, foundation of a building, sacrifice, kidney burnt offering, druids' altars. Elijah is coming. Dr. John Alexander Dowie, restorer of the church in Zion, is coming. Is coming, is coming, is coming. All heartily welcome. Paying game. Tari and Alexander last year. Polygamy. His wife will put the stopper on that. Where was that ad, some Birmingham firm, the luminous crucifix, our Savior? Wake up in the dead of night and see him on the wall, hanging. Pepper's ghost idea. Iron nails ran in. Phosphorus, it must be done with. If you leave a bit of codfish, for instance, I could see the bluey silver over it. Night, I went down into the pantry in the kitchen. Don't like all the smells in it, waiting to rush out. What was it she wanted? Ah, the Malaga raisins. Thinking of Spain, before Rudy was born. The phosphorescence, that bluey greeny, very good for the brain. From Butler's Monument House corner, he glanced along Bachelor's Walk. Daedalus's daughter there, still outside Dillon's auction rooms, must be selling off some old furniture. Knew her eyes at once from the father, lobbing about, waiting for him. Home always breaks up when the mother goes. 15 children he had, birth every year almost. That's in their theology, or the priest won't give the poor woman the confession, the absolution. Increase and multiply. Did you ever hear such an idea? Eat you out of house and home. No families themselves to feed. Living on the fat of the land, their butteries and larders. I'd like to see them do the black fast, Yom Kippur. Next.
Brass buns. One meal and a collation for fear he'd collapse on the altar. A housekeeper of one of those fellows, if you could pick it out of her. Never pick it out of her. Like getting LSD out of him. Does himself well. No guests. All for number one. Watching his water. Bring your own bread and butter. His reverence. Mum's the word. Good Lord. That poor child's dress is in flitters. Underfed she looks too. Potatoes and Marge and potatoes. It's after they feel it. Proof of the pudding. undermines the Constitution. As he set foot on O'Connell Bridge, a puffball of smoke loomed up from the parapet. Brewery barge with export stout. England. Sea air sours it, I hear. Be interesting someday. Get a pass through Hancock to see the brewery. Regular world in itself. Vats of porter, wonderful. Rats get in too. Drink themselves bloated as big as a collie floating. Dead drunk. Drink till they puke again like Christians. Imagine drinking that. Rats. Vats. Well, of course, if we knew all the things. Looking down, he saw flapping strongly, wheeling between the gaunt quay walls, gulls. Rough weather outside. If I threw myself down, Reuben J's son must have swallowed a good bellyful of that sewage. One at April's too much. It's the droll way he comes out with the things. Knows how to tell a story, too. They wheeled lower. Looking for grub. Wait. He threw down among them a crumpled paper ball. Elijah 32 feet per second is calm. Not a bit. Ball bobbed unheeded on the wake of swells, floated under by the bridge piers. Not such damn fools. Also, the day I threw that stale cake out of Erin's King, picked it up in the wake 50 yards astern. Live by their wits. They wheeled, flapping. A hungry, famished gull flaps o'er the waters dull. This is how poets write, a similar sound. But then Shakespeare has no rhymes, blank verse. The flow of the language it is, the thoughts solemn. Hamlet, I am thy father's spirit, doomed for a certain time to walk the earth. 2 apples a penny, 2 for a penny. His gaze passed over the glazed apples serried on her stand. Australians, they must be this time of year. Shiny peels, polishes them up with a rag or a handkerchief. Wait, those poor birds. Next, please.
He halted again. Whoops. Is it me? It is me. He halted again and bought from the old apple woman 2 Banbury cakes for a penny and broke the brittle paste and threw its fragments down into the Liffey. See that? The gulls swooped silently, 2, then all, from their heights, pouncing on prey, gone every morsel. Aware of their greed and cunning, he shook the powdery crumb from his hands. They never expected that. Manna. Live on fishy flesh, they have to. All seabirds, gulls, sea goose, swans from Liffey swim down here sometimes to preen themselves. No accounting for tastes. Wonder what kind of is swan meat. Robinson Crusoe had to live on them. They wheeled, flapping weakly. I'm not going to throw any more. Penny quite enough. Lot of thanks I get. Not even a caw. They spread foot and mouth disease too. If you cram a turkey, say on chestnut meal, it tastes like that. Eat pig like pig. But then why is it that saltwater fish are not salty? How is that? His eyes sought answer from the river and saw a rowboat rock at anchor on the treacly swells lazily its plastered board. Chinos, 2 trousers. Good idea, that. Wonder if he pays rent to the corporation. How can you own water, really? It's always flowing in a stream, never the same, which in the stream of life we trace. Because life is a stream. All kinds of places are good for ads. That quack doctor for the clap used to be stuck up in all the greenhouses. Never see it now. Strictly confidential. Dr. High Franks. Didn't cost him a red like McGinney the Dancing Master self-advertisement. Got fellas to stick them up or stick them up himself for that matter on the QT, running in to loosen a button. Fly by night. Just the place too. Post no bills. Post no bills. Some chap with a dose burning him. If he, no, I don't believe it. He wouldn't surely. No. Mr. Bloom moved forward, raising his troubled eyes. Next, please.
Think no more about that. After 1, time ball on the ballast office is down. Done sink time. Fascinating little book that is of Sir Robert Ball's Parallax. I never exactly understood. There's a priest, could ask him. It's Greek, parallax, parallel, parallax. Meet him, pike houses, she called it, till I told her about the transmigration. Or rocks. Mr. Bloom smiled. Or rocks at 2 windows of the ballast office. She's right after all. Only big words for ordinary things on account of the sound. She's not exactly witty. Can be rude too. Blurt out what I was thinking. Still, I don't know. She used to say Ben Dollard had a bass, barrel-tone voice. He has legs like barrels, and you'd think he was swinging into a barrel. Now, isn't that the wit? They used to call him Big Ben, not half as witty as calling him bass barrel-tone. Appetite like an albatross. Get outside a barn of beef. Powerful man, and he was at storing away at #1 bass, barrel of bass. See, it all works out. A procession of white smock men marched slowly towards him, along the gutter, scarlet sashes across their boards. Bargains, like that priest there this morning. We have sinned, we have sinned. He read the scarlet letters on their 5 tall white hats. HELYS. Wisdom, Hellies. Y, lagging behind, drew a chunk of bread from under his forehead, crammed it into his mouth, and munched as he walked. Our staple food. 3 bob a day, walking along the gutter, street after street. Just keep skin and bone together. Bread and skilly. They are not boiled, no McGlade's men. Doesn't bring in any business either. I suggested to him about a transport show cart with 2 smart girls sitting inside writing letters, copybooks, envelopes, blotting paper. I bet they would have caught on. Smart girls writing something catch the eye at once. Everyone dying to know what she's writing. Get 20 of them around you if you stare at nothing. Have a finger in the pie. Women too. Curiosity. Pilorous salt. Wouldn't have it, of course, because he didn't think of it himself first. Or the ink bottle, I suggested, with a false stain of black celluloid. His ideas for ads, like plum trees potted under the obituaries, cold meat department. You can't lick 'em. What? Our envelopes. Hello, Jones, where are you going? Can't stop, Robinson. I'm hasting to purchase the only reliable ink eraser. Cancel. Sold by Hellies Limited, 85 Dame Street. Well, out of that ruck I am. Devil of a job it was collecting accounts with those convents. Tranquilla Convent. That was a nice nun there. Really sweet face. Wimple suited her small head. Sister, sister. I am sure she was crossed in love by her eyes. Very hard to bargain with that sort of woman. I disturbed her at her devotions that morning, but glad to communicate with the outside world. Our great day, she said. Feast of Our Lady of Mount Carmel. Sweet name too, Carmel. She knew, I think, she knew, by the way, if she had married, she would have changed. I suppose they really were short of money. Fried everything in the best butter all the same. No lard for them. My heart's broke eating dripping. They like buttering themselves in and out. Molly, tasting it, her veil up. Sister, Pat Claffey, the pawnbroker's daughter. It was a nun, they say, invented barbed wire. He crossed Westmoreland Street, where the apostrophe S had plodded by. Rover cycle shop. Those races are on today. How long ago is that? Year. Phil Gilligan died. We are in Lombard Street West. Wait, was it Tom's? Got the job in Wisdom. Helly's year was married. Helly's year we married. 6 years, 10 years ago. 94 he died. Yes, that's right. The big fire at Arnott's. Val Dillon, the Lord Mayor. The Lint Cree dinner. Alderman Robert O'Reilly emptying the port into his soup before the flag fell. Bob lapping it for the inner alderman. Couldn't hear what band was playing. For what we have already received, may the Lord make us. Millie was a kiddie then. Molly had the elephant gay dress with the braided frogs. Man tailored with self-colored buttons. She didn't like it because I sprained my ankle first day she wore choir picnic at the Sugarloaf. Next, please.
As if that old Goodwin's tall hat done up with some sticky stuff. Flies picnic too. Never put on dress on her back like it. Fitted her like a glove, shoulders and hips. Just beginning to plump it out well. Rabbit pie we had that day. People looking after her. Happy. Happier than. Snug little room that was, with the red wallpaper. Dockrell's, 1 and 9 pence a dozen. Millie's tubbing night. American soap I bought. Elderflowery. Cozy smell of her bath water. Funny, she looked soaked all over. Shapely too. Now photography. Poor Papa's daguerreotype atelier he told me of. Hereditary taste. He walked along the curbstone. Stream of life. What was the name of that priestly looking chap was always squinting in when he passed? Weak eyes woman. Stopped in Citron's St. Kevin's parade. Pen something. Pandemic? My memory is getting pen. Of course, it's years ago. Goes to the trams, probably. Well, if he couldn't remember a day father's name that he sees every day. Bartle Darcy was the tenor, just coming out then, seeing her home after practice. Conceited fellow with his waxed up mustache. Gave her that song, Winds That Blow from the South. Windy night that was, I went to fetch her there. There was that lodge meeting on about those lottery tickets after Goodwin's concert in the super room or oak room of the mansion house. He and I behind. Sheet of her music blew out of my hand against the high school railings. Lucky it didn't. Thing like that spoils the effect of a night for her. Professor Goodwin linking her in front. Shaky on his pins, poor old sot. His farewell concerts, positively last appearance on any stage. Maybe for months, and maybe for never. Remember her laughing at the wind, her blizzard collar up, corner of Harcourt Road. Remember that gust. Brr, blew up all her skirts, and her boa nearly smothered old Goodwin. She did get flushed in the wind. Remember when we got home, breaking up the fire, frying up those pieces of lap of mutton for her supper with the chutney sauce she liked, and the mulled rum. See her in the bedroom from the hearth, unclamping the busk of her stays, white. Sweet and soft flop her stays made on the bed, always warmed from her, always liked to let herself out. Sitting there till near 2, taking out her hairpins. Millie tucked up in Betty by, happy, happy. That was the night. Next, please.
Oh, Mr. Bloom, how do you do? How do you do, Mrs. Breen? No use complaining. How's Molly those times? Haven't seen her for ages. In the pink, Bloom said gaily. Millie has a position down in Mullingar, you know. Go away. Isn't that grand for her? Yes, and a photographer's there. Getting on like a house on fire. How are all of your charges? All on the baker's list, Mrs. Breen said. How many has she? No other in sight? You're in black, I see. You have no... No, Mr. Bloom said. I've just come from a funeral. Going to crop up all day, I foresee. Who's dead, when, and what did he die of? Turn up like a bad penny. Oh, dear me, Mrs. Breen said. I hope it wasn't a near relation. May as well get her sympathy. Dignam, Mr. Bloom said, an old friend of mine. He died quite suddenly, poor fellow. Heart trouble, I believe. Funeral was this morning. Your funeral's tomorrow while you're coming through the rye. Diddly diddly dee dum dum diddly diddle. Sad to lose old friends. Mrs. Breen's woman eyes said melancholically. Now, that's quite enough about that. Just quietly. Husband? And your lord and master? Mrs. Breen turned up her two large eyes. Hasn't lost them anyhow. Oh, don't be talking, she said. He's a caution to rattlesnakes. He's in there now with his law books, finding out the law of libel. He has me heart scalded. Oh, wait till I show you. Hot mock turtle vapor and steam of new baked jam puffs roly-poly poured out from Harrison's. The heavy noon reek tickled the top of Mr. Bloom's gullet. Want to make good pastry, butter, best flour, demerara sugar, or they'd taste it with the hot tea. Or is it from her? A barefoot Arab stood over the grating, breathing in the fumes. Dead in the gnaw of hunger that way. Pleasure or pain, is it? Penny for dinner? Knife and fork chained to the table. Opening her handbag, chipped leather, hat pin, ought to have a guard on those things. Stick it in a chap's eye in the tram. Rummaging, open, money, please take one. Devils if they lose sixpence. Raise Cain. Husband barging. Where's the 10 shillings I gave you Monday? Are you feeding your little brother's family? Soiled handkerchief, medicine bottle, pastel that was fell. What is she? There must be a new moon out, she said. He's always bad then. Do you know what he did last night? Her hands ceased to rummage. Her eyes fixed themselves on him, wide in alarm, yet smiling. What? Mr. Bloom asked. Let her speak. Look straight in her eyes. I believe you. Trust me. Woke me up in the middle of the night, she said. Dream he had, a nightmare. Indigest? Said the ace of spades was walking up the stairs. The ace of spades? Mr. Bloom said. She took a folded postcard from her handbag. Read that, she said. He got it this morning. What is it? Mr. Bloom asked, taking the card. U-P? U-P. Up, she said. Someone taking a rise out of him. It's a great shame for them, whoever it is. Indeed it is, Mr. Bloom said. Next, please.
She took back the card, saying, and now he's going round to Mr. Menton's office. He's going to take an action for £10,000, he says. She folded the card into her untidy bag and snapped the catch. Same blue serge dress she had 2 years ago. The nap bleaching, seen its best days. Wispish hair over her ears. And that dowdy toque. 3 old grapes to take the harm out of it. Shabby, genteel. She used to be a tasty dresser. Lines around her mouth. Only a year or so older than Molly. See the eye that woman gave her, passing. Cruel, the unfair sex. He looked still at her, holding back behind his look his discontent. Pungent mock turtle, oxtail, mullen getaway. I'm hungry too. Flakes of pastry on the gusset of her dress. Daub of sugary flour stuck to her cheek. Rhubarb tart with liberal fillings. Rich fruit interior. Josie Powell that was. In Luke Doyle's long ago, Dolphin's Barn, the charades. U.P. Up. Change the subject. Do you ever hear anything of Mrs. Befoy? Mr. Bloom asked. Mina Befoy, she said. Philip Befoy, I was thinking. Playgoers Club. Matcham often thinks of the master stroke. Did I pull the chain? Yes, last act. Yes. I just called to ask on the way in. Is she over it? She's in the lying-in hospital in Hollis Street. Dr. Horn got her in. She's 3 days bad now. Oh, Mr. Bloom said, I'm sorry to hear that. Yes, Mrs. Bloom said, and a house full of kids at home. A very stiff berth, the nurse told me. Oh, Mr. Bloom said. His heavy, pitying gaze absorbed her news. His tongue clacked in compassion. I'm sorry to hear that, he said. Poor thing. 3 days. That's terrible for her. Mrs. Breen nodded. She was taken bad on Tuesday. Mr. Bloom touched her funny bone gently, warning her. Mind, let that man pass. Next.
Bony form strode along the curbstone from the river, staring with a rapt gaze into the sunlight through a heavy stringed glass. Tight as a skull piece, a tiny hat gripped his head. From his arm, a folded dust coat, a stick and an umbrella dangled to his stride. Watch him, Mr. Bloom said. He always walks outside the lampposts. Watch. Who is he, if it's a fair question, Mrs. Breen asked. Is he Dotty? His name is Cashel Boyle O'Connor Fitzmaurice Tyndall Farrell, Mr. Bloom said, smiling. Watch. He has enough of them, she said. Dennis will be like that one of these days. She broke off suddenly. There he is, she said. I must go after him. Goodbye. Remember me to Molly, won't you? I will, Mr. Bloom said. He watched her dodge through passages towards the shop front. Dennis Breen, in skimpy frock coat and blue canvas shoes, shuffled out of Harrison's, hugging 2 heavy tomes to his ribs. Brown, blown in from the bay, like old times. He suffered her to overtake him without surprise, and thrust his dull grey beard towards her, his loose jaw wagging as he spoke earnestly. Me sugar, off his chump. Mr. Bloom walked on again easily, seen ahead of him in sunlight, the type skull piece, the dangling stick, umbrella, dust coat. Going the 2 days. Watch him. Out she goes again. One way of getting on in the world, and that other old, mosey lunatic and those duds. Hard time she must have with him. UP up. I'll take my oath that Alf Bergen or Richie Golden wrote it for a lark in the Scotch House. I bet anything. Round to Menton's office, his oyster eyes staring at the postcard. Be a feast for the gods. Next, please.
He passed the Irish Times. There might be other answers lying there. Like to answer them all. Good system for criminals. Code. At their lunch now. Clerk with the glasses there doesn't know me. Oh, leaves them there to simmer. Enough bother wading through 44 of them. Wanted smart lady typist to aid gentlemen in literary work. I called you naughty darling because I do not like that other word. The other world. Please tell me what is the meaning. Please tell me what perfume does your wife let me who made the world the way they spring those questions on you. And the other one, Lizzie Twig, my literary efforts have had the good fortune to meet with the repute of the eminent poet A.E., Mr. George Russell. No time to do her hair drinking sloppy tea with a book of poetry. Best paper by long chalks for a small ad. Got the provinces now. Cook and general. Excellent cuisine. Housemaid kept. Wanted live man for spirit counter. Risp girl RC wishes to hear of the post in fruit or pork shop. James Carlyle made that. 6.5% dividend. Made a great deal on Coates shares. Kilkenny. Cunning old Scotch hunks. All the toady news. Our gracious and popular Vicerine. Bought the Irish field now. Lady Mountcashel has quite recovered from after her confinement and rode out with the Ward Union stag hounds at the enlargement yesterday at Ratho. Unbeatable fox. Pot hunters too. Fear injects juices, makes it tender enough for them. Riding astride, sit her horse like a man. Weight carrying huntress. Next, please.
Let's see for, oh yes. No side saddle or pillion for her, not for Joe. First to the meet, and in at the death. Strong as a brood mare, some of those horsey women swagger around livery stables, toss off a glass of brandy neat, while you'd say knife. That one at the Grosvenor this morning, up with her in the car, wish, wish, stone wall or 5-barred, gate put her mount to it. Think that pug-nosed driver did it out of spite? Who is this? She was like, oh yes, Mrs. Miriam Dandrade, that sold me her old wraps and black underclothes in the Shelbourne Hotel. Divorced, Spanish American. Didn't take a feather out of her, my handling them, as if I were her clothes horse. Saw her at the Viceregal party when Stubbs, the park ranger, got me in with Whelan of the Express, scavenging what the quality left. High tea. Mayonnaise I poured on the plums, thinking it was custard. Her ears ought to have tinged for a few weeks after. Want to be a bull for her, born courtesan. No nursery work for her, thanks. Poor Mrs. Purefoy, Methodist husband, method in his madness, saffron bun and milk and soda lunch in the educational dairy, eating with a stopwatch, 32 chews to the minute. Still, his mutton chop whiskers grew. Supposed to be well connected. Theodore's cousin in Dublin Castle. One Tony relative in every family. Hardy annuals he presents her with. Saw him out at the Three Jolly Toppers, marching along bareheaded, and his eldest boy carried one in a market net. The squallers, poor thing, having had to give the breast year after year, all the hours of the night. Selfish those TTs are. Dog in the manger. Only one lump of sugar in my tea, if you please. Next.
He stood at Fleet Street crossing, luncheon interval. A sixpenny at Rose? Must look up that ad in the National Library. An eightpenny in the Burton? Better. On my way. He walked on past Bolton's Westmoreland house. Tea. I forgot to tap Tom Kernan. 3 days, imagine groaning on a bed with a vinegared handkerchief around her forehead, her belly swollen out. Whew. Dreadful, simply. Child's head too big, forceps, doubled up inside her, trying to butt its way out blindly, groping for the way out. Kill me, that would. Lucky Molly got over hers lightly. They ought to invent something to stop that. Life with hard labor. Twilight sleep idea. Queen Victoria was given that. 9 she had. A good layer. Old woman that lived in a shoe, she had so many children. Suppose he was consumptive. Time someone thought about it instead of gassing about what was it, the pensive bosom of the silver effulgence. Flap-doodle to feed fools on. They could easily have big establishments, whole thing quite painless out of all the taxes. Give every child born 5 quid at compound interest up to 21, 5% is 100 shillings and 5 tiresome pounds. Multiply by 20 decimal system. Encourage people to put by money, save 110 and a bit 21 years. Want to work it out on paper, come to a tidy sum, more than you think. Not stillborn, of course. They are not even registered. Trouble for nothing. Next.
Funny sight, 2 of them together, their bellies out. Molly and Mrs. Moiselle, Mother's meeting. Pistitis retires for the time being, then returns. How flat they look after all of a sudden. Peaceful eyes, weight off their minds. Old Mrs. Thornton was a jolly old soul. All my babies, she said, the spoon of pap in her mouth before she fed them. Oh, that's yum yum. Got her hand crushed by old Tom Wall's son. His first bow to the public, head like a prize pumpkin. Snuffy Dr. Myrne. People knocking them up at all hours. God's sake, Doctor. Wife in her throes. Then keep them waiting months for their fee. To attendance on your wife. No gratitude in people. Humane doctors, most of them. Before the huge high door of the Irish House of Parliament, a flock of pigeons flew, their little frolic after meals. Who will we do it on? I picked the fellow in black. Here goes. Here's good luck. Must be thrilling from the air. Apjohn, myself, and Owen Goldberg up in the trees near Goose Green playing the monkeys. Mackerel, they called me. Squad of constables debouched from College Street, marching in Indian file. Goose step. Food-heated faces. Sweating helmets, patting their truncheons. After their feed, with a good load of fat soup under their belts. Policeman's lot is oft a happy one. They split up into groups and scattered, saluting towards their beats. Let out to graze. Best moment to attack one in pudding time. A punch in his dinner. One of others marching irregularly round the Trinity railings, making for the station. Bound for their troughs. Prepared to receive cavalry. Prepared to receive soup. He crossed under Tommy Moore's roguish finger. They did right to put him over a urinal, meeting of the waters. Ought to be places for women. Running into cake shops, settle my hat straight. There is not in this wide world a valley. Great song of Julia Morgan's. Kept her voice up to the very last. Pupil of Michael Balfe, wasn't she? He gazed after the last broad tunic. Nasty customers to tackle. Jack Power could a tale unfold. Father a G-man. If a fellow gave them trouble, being lagged, they let him have it hot and heavy in the bridewell. Can't blame them after all with the job they have, especially the young hornies. That horse policeman, the day Joe Chamberlain was given his degree in Trinity, he got a run for his money. My word, he did. His horse's hoofs clattering after us down Abbey Street. Look, I had the presence of mind to dive into Manning's, or I was souped. He did come a wallop, by George. Must have cracked his skull on the cobblestones. I oughtn't to have got myself swept along with those medicals and the Trinity jibs in their mortarboards. Looking for trouble. Still, I got to know that young Dixon who dressed that sting for me in the matter, and now he's in Hollis Street, where Mrs. Purify. Wheels within wheels. Police whistle in my ears still. All skedaddled. Why he fixed on me. Give me in charge. Right, here it began. Up the Boers. 3 cheers for Duet. We'll hang Joe Chamberlain on a sour apple tree. Next, please.
Silly Billy. Mob of young cubs yelling their guts out. Vinegar Hill. The butter exchange van. Few years' time, half of them magistrates and civil servants. War comes on, into the army, helter-skelter. Same fellows used to weather on the scaffold high. Never know who you're talking to. Corny Kelleher, he has Harvey Duff in his eye, like that Peter or Dennis or James Carey that blew the gaff on the Invincibles. Member of the corporation, too, egging raw youths on to get in the know. All the time, drawing Secret Service pay from the castle, dropping like a hot potato. Why those plainclothes men are always courting slavies. Easily twig a man used to uniform. Square pushing up against a back door, maul her a bit. Then the next thing on the menu. And who is the gentleman does be visiting there? Was the young master saying nothing? Anything? Peeping Tom through the keyhole. Decoy duck. hot-blooded young student fooling round her fat arms ironing. Are those yours, Mary? I don't wear such things. Stop, or I'll tell the missus on you out half the night. There are great times coming, Mary. Wait till you see. I get along with your great times coming. Barmaids, too, tobacco shop girls. James Stephen's idea was the best. He knew them. Circles of 10, so that a fellow couldn't get round on more than his own ring. Sinn Fein. Back out, you get the knife. Hidden hand. Stay in. The firing squad. Turnkey's daughter got him out of Richmond, off from Lusk, putting up in the Buckingham Palace Hotel, under their very noses, Garibaldi. It must have a certain fascination. Parnell, Arthur Griffith is a square-headed fellow, but he has no go in him for the mob. Want to gas about our lovely land, gammon and spinach, Dublin Bakery Company's tea room, debating societies, that republicanism is the best form of government, that the language question should take precedence of the economic question. Have your daughters inveigle them to your house, stuff them up with meat and drink, Michaelmas goose. Here's a good lump of thyme seasoning under the apron for you. Have another quart of goose grease before it gets too cold. Half-fed enthusiasts, penny roll and a walk with the band, no grace for the carver, the thought that the other chap pays best sauce in the world, make themselves thoroughly at home, shove us over those apricots, meaning peaches, the not far distant day, home rule, sun, rising up in the northwest. Jim.
His smile faded as he walked, a heavy cloud hiding the sun slowly, shadowing Trinity's surly front. Trams passed one another, ignoring, outgoing, clanging, useless words. Things go on same day after day. Squads of police marching out, back, trams in, out. Those two loonies mooching about, Dignam carted off, Mina Purify swollen belly, on a bed groaning to have a child tugged out of her. One born every second somewhere, other dying every second. Since I fed the birds 5 minutes. 300 kicked the bucket, other 300 born, washing the blood off. All are washed in the blood of the Lamb, bawling, ma. City full passing away, other city full coming, passing away too, other coming on, passing on, houses, lines of houses, streets, miles of pavement, piled up, bricks, stones, changing hands, this owner, that landlord never dies, they say. Other steps into his shoes when he gets his notice to quit. They buy the place up with gold, and still they have all the gold. Swindle in it somewhere, piled up in cities, worn away, age after age, pyramids in sand, built on bread and onions, slaves, Chinese wall, Babylon, big stones left, round towers, rest, rubble, sprawling suburbs, jerry-built, Kerwan's mushroom houses, built of breeze, shelter for the night. No one is anything. This is the very worst hour of the day. Vitality, dull, gloomy, hate this hour. Feel as if I've been eaten and spewed. Provost's house, the Reverend Dr. Samuel, tinned salmon. The Reverend Dr. Salmon, tinned salmon, well tinned in there. Wouldn't live in it if they paid me. Hope they have liver and bacon today. Nature abhors a vacuum. The sun freed itself slowly and lit glints of light among the silverware in Walter Sexton's window opposite, by which John Howard Parnell passed unseen. There he is, the brother, image of him, haunting face. Now that's a coincidence. Course hundreds of times you'd think a person and didn't meet him, like a man walking in his sleep. No one knows him. Must be a corporation meeting today. They say he never put on the city marshal's uniform since he got the job. Charlie Bulger used to come out on his high horse, cocked hat, puffed, powdered and shaved. Look at the woebegone walk of him, eating a bad egg. Poached eyes on a ghost. I have a pain. Great man's brother. His brother's brother. He'd look nice on the city charger. Drop into the DBC, probably for his coffee. Play chess there. His brother used men as pawns. Let them all go to pot. Next, please.
Afraid to pass a remark on him. Freeze them up with that eye of his. That's the fascination, the name. All a bit touched. Mad Fanny and his other sister, Mrs. Dickinson, driving about with scarlet harness, bolt upright like Surgeon McCardle. Still, David Sheehy beat him for South Meath. Apply for the Chiltern Hundreds and retire into public life. The Patriots' banquet, eating orange peels in the park. Simon Daedalus said, when they put him in Parliament, that Parnell would come back from the grave and lead him out of the House of Commons by the arm. Of the two-headed octopus, one of whose heads is the head upon which the ends of the world have forgotten to come, while the other speaks with a Scotch accent. The tentacles, they passed from behind Miss Bloom along the curbstone. Beard and bicycle, young woman. And there he is, too. Now that's really a coincidence, second time. Coming events cast their shadows before. With the approval of the eminent poet, Mr. George Russell, that might be Lizzie Twigg with him. A, what does that mean? Initials, perhaps, Albert Edward, Arthur Edmund, Alphonsus Ed L. Esquire. What was he saying? The ends of the world with the Scotch accent. Tentacles, octopus, something occult, symbolism. Holding forth, she's taking it all in, not saying a word. To aid gentlemen in literary work. His eyes follow the high figure in homespun, beard and bicycle, a listening woman at his side, coming from the vegetarian. Only wedgie bubbles and fruit. Don't eat a beefsteak. If you do, the eyes of that cow will pursue you through all eternity. They say it's healthier. Wind and watery, though. Tried it. Keep you on the run all day. Bad as a bloater. Dreams all night. Why do they call that thing they gave me nut steak? Vegetarians. Fruitarians. To give you the idea, you are eating rump steak. Absurd. Salty, too. They cook in soda. Keep you sitting by the tap all night. Her stockings were loose over her ankles. I detest that, so tasteless. Those literary, ethereal people, they are all. Dreamy, cloudy, symbolistic. Aesthetes they are. I wouldn't be surprised if it was that kind of food, you see, produces the light waves of the brain, the poetical. For example, one of those policemen sweating Irish stew into their shirts. You couldn't squeeze a line of poetry out of him. Don't know what poetry is even. Must be in a certain mood. Next.
The dreamy, cloudy gull waves over the waters dull. He crossed at Nassau Street corner and stood before the window of Yates and Son, pricing the field glasses. Or will I drop into old Harris's and have a chat with young Sinclair? Well-mannered fellow, probably at his lunch. Must get those old glasses of mine set right. Gur's lenses, 6 guineas. Germans making their ways everywhere. Sell on easy terms to capture trade. Undercutting. Might chance in a pair in the Railway Lost Property Office. Astonishing the things people leave behind them in trains and clothes. What do they be thinking about? Women too, incredible. Last year, traveling to Ennis, had to pick up that farmer's daughter's bag and hand it to her at the Limerick Junction. Unclaimed money, too. There's a little watch up there on the roof of the bank to test those glasses by. His lids came down on the lower rims of his irides. Can't see it. If you imagine it's there, you can almost see it. Can't see it. He faced about and, standing between the awnings, held out his right hand at arm's length toward the sun. Wanted to try that often. Yes, completely. The tip of his little finger blotted out the sun's disk. Must be the focus where the rays cross. If I had black glasses. Interesting. There was a lot of talk about those sunspots when we were in Lombard Street West, looking up from the back garden. Terrific explosions they are. There will be a total eclipse this year, autumn sometime. Now that I come to think of it, if that ball falls at Greenwich time, it's the clock is worked by an electric wire from Dunsink. Must go out there some first Saturday of the month. If I could get an introduction to Professor Joly or learn up something about his family, that would do it. Man always feels complimented. Flattery where least expected. Nobleman proud to descend from some king's mistress, his foremother. Lay it on with a trowel. Cap in hand goes all through the land. Not to go in and blurt out what you know you're not to. What's parallax? Show this gentleman to the door. Ah. His hand fell to his side again. Never know anything about it. Waste of time. Gas balls spinning about, crossing each other, passing. Same old ding-dong always. Gas, then solid, then whirled, then cold, then dead shell shifting around, frozen rock, like that pineapple rock. The moon. Must be a new moon out, she said. I believe there is. He went on by La Maison Claire. Wait, the full moon was the night we were Saturday fortnight exactly, there's a new moon. Walking down by the Tolka. Not bad for a Fairview moon. She was humming. The young May moon, she's beaming, love. He, other side of her, elbow, arm. He, glowworm's lamp is gleaming. Love, touch, fingers, asking, answer, yes. Stop, stop. If that was it, must. Mr. Bloom, quick thinking, slowlier walking past Adam Court. With keep quiet relief, his eyes took note, this is the street here, middle of the day, of Bob Dorn's bottle shoulders. On his annual bend, McCoy said. They drink in order to say or do something, or chercher la femme. Up in the combe with chummies and streetwalkers, and then the rest of the year, sober as a judge. Next, please.
Yes, thought so. Sloping into the Empire. Go on. Plain soda would do him good. Where Pat Kinsella had his harp theatre before Whitbread rang Queen's. Broth of a boy. Don,
Who's it called?
what's it called? I used to know business with his harvest moon face and the pokey bonnet. 3 purty maids from school. How time flies, eh? Showing long red pantaloons under his skirts. Drinkers drinking, laughed, spluttering their drink against their breath. More power, Pat. Coarse red, fun for drunkards. Guffaw, and smoke. Take off that white hat. His parboiled eyes. Where is he now? Beggar somewhere. The harp that once did starve us all. Next.
I was happier then. Or was that I? Or am I now I? 28 I was. She 23 when we left Lombard Street West. Something changed. Could never like it again after Rudy. Can't bring back time, like holding water in your hand. Would you go back to then? Just beginning then, would you? Are you not happy in your home, you poor little naughty boy? Wants to sew on buttons for me. I must answer. Write it in the library. Grafton Street gay with housed awnings lured his senses. Muslin prints, silk, dames and dowagers, jingle of harness, hoof thuds, low ringing in the bakery causeway. Thick feet that woman has in the white stockings. Hope the rain mucks them up on her. Country bred chaw bacon. All the beef to the heels were in. Always gives a woman clumsy feet. Molly looks out of plumb. He passed, dallying, the windows of Brown Thomas, silk merchants, cascades of ribbons, flimsy China silks. A tilted urn poured from its mouth a flood of blood-hued poplin. Lustrous blood, the Huguenots brought that here. La cosa y santa, Tara, Tara, great chorus that. Tara, must be washed in rainwater. Meyer beer, Tara, bum, bum, bum. Katrina.
Pincushions. I'm a long time threatening to buy one, sticking them all over the place, needles in the window curtains. He bared slightly his left forearm. Scrape. Nearly gone. Not today, anyhow. Must go back for that lotion. For her birthday, perhaps. June, July, August, September 8th. Nearly 3 months off. Then she mightn't like it. Women don't pick up pins. Say it cuts low. Gleaming silks, petticoats on slim brass rails, rays of flat silk stockings. Useless to go back. Had to be. Tell me all. High voices, sun-warm silk, jingling harnesses, all for a woman, home and houses, silk webs, silver, rich fruits, spicy from Jaffa, Agendath Netam, wealth of the world. A warm human plumpness settled down on his brain. His brain yielded. Perfume of embraces all him assailed. With hungered flesh obscurely, he mutely craved to adore. Duke Street. Here we are. Must eat. The Burton. Feel better then. He turned Combridge's corner, still pursued. Jingling hoof thuds. Perfumed bodies, warm, full, all kissed, yielded. In deep summer fields, tangled pressed grass. In trickling hallways of tenements, along sofas, creaking beds. Next, please. Or is that the end?
Oh,
I believe we'll
Time
stop right there.
flies.
Lois, you said something?
No, how time flies. It's already almost 3:30.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think we'll stop there. We still have another 18 pages to go, I think.
Yeah.
And so we're about halfway if I'm counting. So let me get I know where the Wordsworth is.
The Gabler is 138.
Gab is 138. Okay. Other versions, please.
The
Wordsworth.
small, sorry,
Okay,
Jim, go ahead.
okay then. All right, Stonga, thank you. Wordsworth, page 150.
Thank you.
The small penguin is 168.
And the long penguin is 214, please.
Penguin long.
I need the actual words,
214.
please.
Actual words will be Jack, love,
Okay.
darling.
Kiss me, Reggie.
Kiss me, Reggie, my boy. Oh, love. Find this here. Next week is okay. We're still in February, last day of February.
No. Yeah.
And then let me do this. Okay, let's perhaps we have a few things to talk about here up to this point.
I'm always struck by what a forward-thinking man Leopold Bloom is. I mean, he's got his advertising business on the brain. He's got plans for tax reform, for this, for that. He should have been mayor of Dublin. And if you contrast with Stephen, who's oriented toward literature and the past, whereas Leopold is really grounded in the world around him and has an endless supply of good ideas for how to improve it.
Mm-hmm.
He has a lot of ideas. but over time you'll probably learn that he's not real good with actual facts, and he some of his ideas are not particularly well thought out. And a real trivial example is that thing in the fox hunt. And I don't even know if I can find it at this particular point. Oh yeah, on page 141 in Gabler, not in Gabler, in Wordsworth, he's got this thing going on. He says, fear injects juices, make it tender enough for them. And actually, it's exactly the opposite.
Hmm.
So, I mean, but this is a very a human thing. He is forward thinking all the time, and he is always trying to think of stuff. But he's kind of, he's kind of isolated. And yeah, there are a number of things where I think if Joe Kenny were here, he would point out that frequently that Leopold Bloom is certainly not an accountant.
Mhm.
He certainly does not have control of his numbers.
Just on that point, Duncan, if you're finished, John Butler Yeats, who was W.B. Yeats' father, said that when Joyce created Bloom, he had created the voice of each man's inner spirit, which is an interesting point. But it doesn't say that he's a genius or anything. He says he's like all the rest of us. He has ordinary thoughts, and we see these ordinary thoughts all through this passage. What struck me particularly when he decides, basically, I'm hungry, I've got to eat, and he goes in for lunch. So there's all this ordinary stuff going on, but maybe that's what makes him great, is his ordinariness.
Yeah, I think that's an important thing. But I tend when I'm thinking about these to frame his total position. And although Bloom himself is very social, he doesn't really, throughout the book, he really doesn't have many confidants.
Yeah.
He tends to always be a little bit on the outside, and which gives him lots of time to think about
Yeah.
this and that and the other. And he doesn't drink. He's going to have some Burgundy, but even that doesn't particularly settle well with him. Yeah,
Yeah.
but he does pay attention to the world around him.
Yes.
And his world is a very sensual, sensory world. So, for example, please.
I was just going to add, Duncan, I agree with what you said. He's perceptive and sensitive to the world around him. I would just add, often with great sympathy.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Imagining the labor that woman is going through.
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, with tremendous sympathy. If this is probably going to be going a little bit too far, but I would say that he actually has a woman's sensitivity during a time when women had very little power and pretty much relied on their ability to detect what's going on.
Mm.
It's kind of a commonplace in some psychology and sociological circles that men tend to be a little brutish because they have the power and they don't have to be sensitive. And they can just kind of thrash around and everybody will adjust to them. But
Psychologists today call that emotional intelligence, where you have sensitivity to what people are feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And just to build on your point about the powerlessness of women, we've had sort of Josie Breen, who was formerly Josie Powell, an old flame of blooms, kind of
Mhm.
wafted around under our noses, and I feel so sorry for her. You know,
Oh, yes.
she's made this really poor marriage. There's nothing she can do about it. And he's talking about, how she's kind of come down in the world, that she was quite beautiful. The clothes are now faded and so forth, because she's married to this guy whom, as she puts it, having lost none of her rhetorical powers, is a caution to rattlesnakes. I love that.
Great line.
Greatly.
I actually know a man like Mr. Bream,
Okay.
and he lived in this neighborhood. Now I live out in the countryside, but this guy who was kind of a loner got into a legal fight with the guy who sold the land around here.
Mhm.
And he would get up frequently. He's gone now. But he would start walking out, and it's like an hour to town, but somehow he figured he would get a ride, and he would have file folders under his arm that he was taking to go talk to his lawyer. And he was completely out of his head.
So I have a
Hopefully he was
question.
feeling no pain.
I've always been puzzled by UP. Why is that such a huge insult? Is it just you're peeing? Is that's what that's supposed to be, the insult? I'm missing something there.
It could be up yours, which would be
It-
an insult.
Yeah, could.
But the notes say that we don't know what this is.
Mhm.
I've heard that one thing it could be is it was a slang expression for kind of meaning over the top.
Okay.
That he's just perhaps another way of saying you're a wacko.
Mhm.
You're
And,
so
and
over the top.
can we clarify exactly what the postcard says? Does it simply have U period, P period? Is that all that's on the postcard?
I think so.
I think so
Think
too.
so.
Yeah, I think you're right. She gives him
So-
the postcard.
Yeah.
Find it here.
Because what they follow with the narration is then somebody interprets it as up UP, but it doesn't say up. It says U period, P period.
Oh,
Let me put a big UP on.
I found
And
I
it's-
found the part here. It says, okay, so read that. She said he got it this morning. What is it? Bloom asked, taking the card. U period P period. U period P. Up, she said. Someone taking a rise out of him. It's a great shame for them, whoever it is. I mean, and for
Well-
me, I just thought that part of this guy's madness was that UP doesn't really mean anything, or it's pretty ambiguous. And this guy's heading to a lawyer to sue and get, was it 10,000 pounds?
10,000 pounds.
Well, I don't want to get crazy as a typesetter here, but on the card it's a capital U period, capital P period.
Yep.
So I'm guessing it's an abbreviation for something.
Mhm.
I don't know
Mhm.
what. Because when it's repeated on the next line, when she says it without any capital letter on the P. She just says UP.
And I know it might be my addition, Lois, but is there a period after the lowercase p when she says it?
No, there's a colon.
That's right. That's what I thought. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It's just so weird. For a man who refuses to use any punctuation as he's writing, he throws in a colon there.
So it probably, it has meaning of some sort. So let me ask you, what line is the first UP?
It is line 258 on page 130. Actually, it's 257.
Actually, I just need the 258.
257 on page 130.
257. Okay, let's see if Gifford. Okay, here's 250 up. Okay, in Charles Dickens' Oliver Twist, chapter 24, the expression U period P period is used by an apothecary's apprentice to announce the imminent death of an old woman.
What?
In the French edition of Ulysses, the postcard is translated Hutu, which English is, "You're nuts, you've been screwed, you're all washed up." So you're up. It's done. You're done, buddy. Richard Ellman suggests, quote, "When erect, you urinate rather than ejaculate." Okay. Another possibility is the
That's
designation.
helpful.
Sorry, Duncan. Elman says, therefore, UP up, PE.
Yeah, I had heard that announced, and it's an
UP
insult
up.
about peeing up rather than peeing down.
But I have a good one for you. Vladimir Nabokov preferred to associate the expression with UP spells goslings, apparently a schoolboy insult recorded principally in the English Midlands. So it's endless.
It's endless. Okay. Well, another possibility is a designation UP for whiskey, meaning under proof, below the legal standard. In other words, watered. Suggested by Robert T. Burns in 1983, a graduate student in the English department at UCLA. Well, another speculation has to do with the initials that precede the docket number in Irish cemeteries. See Adams, page 192-93.
Here's one for you. Leah Harper Bowron carries the speculation game to the extreme with a specific medical diagnosis. Dennis Breen pees up or sprays his urine upward when urinating from a standing position because he has hypospadias and his urethral opening is within or behind his test space.
Getting pretty,
Oh my gosh.
pretty subtle there.
I'm not writing that note.
I understand. You're just reporting to us.
Absolutely.
It takes me a while. Takes me a while to get this, but I thought I would look in this one. It weighs a ton.
Okay. Yes, it does weigh a ton.
Oh.
It's a sizable book.
Oh.
And very reasonably priced for its size.
Yes, I got it at the discount when it was first issued.
What's the name of it?
It is the Cambridge Centenary Ulysses.
Oh, yes. Yes.
And it weighs more than I do.
It's like a 5-pound book. You can use it for exercising.
Good for keeping your door open.
Bill Kennedy, who's not here, obviously, had a theory the first time we went through this that P is actually pronounced pay in Irish. And so it could say you pay up. In other words, money. It's another angle.
Mm-hmm.
It's here.
Mm-hmm. Well, while Lois is looking that up, I'll mention one thing where the section that mentions nut steak, nutarians, fruitarians, they give you an item, they give you the idea you're eating rump steak, absurd, salty too, they cook in soda. I would assume that Leonard Bloom at some point has actually tried nut steak, that he is speaking from experience here.
Okay.
Sam Sloat, who's a professor of English in Trinity, says UP, the spelling pronunciation of up adverb equals over or finished, which comes back to what you said earlier, Duncan.
Your time is
the expression UP up dates at least as far back as Dickens.
What the centenary from Cambridge says is very similar to what you had offered, Donna. She Correction of this and all of the following instances. Bloom spells and reads the word aloud. Various explanations have been offered, but most likely source is the expression used by the apothecary's apprentice in Dickens' Oliver Twist, 1838, to euphemistically announce an imminent death. It's all UP there.
Okay.
Does the Cambridge offer a French translation?
No,
Which it go in the French translation of Ulysses, the postcard is translated as "foutu," F-O-U-T-U, which means you're nuts, you've been screwed, you're all washed up.
So, Donna, are you looking at the latest Sam Sloat annotated?
I've just picked this up on my phone on Safari, I think.
So how would you say everything is fine?
Oh, okay.
Oh,
And, okay, so you did a search of some sort. Or are you looking?
Sorry, me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I just put it into the search function in my phone, UP in Joyce, and it gave me all this stuff. It even has a German translation. Please stop me if I'm going on too long. The 1927 German translation by Goert, which has P-L-E-N, plem, gaga, instead of UPO.
Does anybody have a Klingon dictionary?
Not yet. I'm sure it's on the way. But you know, this is like early, in one sense, this is anticipating Finnegan's Wake.
Yes.
With multiple meanings all around. And I still insist that this is actually one of Joyce's underlying themes, which is words, phrases are very tricky.
Yeah.
And don't be too sure that you understand what's actually trying to be communicated, whether in conversation or in writing, because you know, we live in a world of babble.
It came up the other evening, Duncan, in the Finnegan's Wake reading, where I think it was Jerry Fialka was making the point that you shouldn't try and understand this. You know, it's happening, it's there, and if we're reading it with open eyes, we see what it is. Whereas if we're reading it with closed eyes, we can make it up into anything. That's a good translation of what Jerry said.
Yeah. Jerry really, when he's running his meeting, the California meeting, his main question is, how does it make you feel?
Interesting.
He's not even looking for meaning most of the time. It's just, how does it make you feel? How do these sentences, etc.
I think that's a really important point. It takes a lot of the frustration out of it, you know, that you can just plod on. If you don't get it, you move on, and you know, on the 25th reading, something might occur.
Yeah. What did I do? Oh, there's so much here. There's so much here.
Sure.
So we will gather together next Thursday and read the final parts of Listrogonians and continue our discussion on this section.
Great.
And
Excellent.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, everybody.
Yes.
So Katrina, hold on. I want this, Katrina.
Sorry.
Go down to the bottom of your screen
Oh,
where they have the menu and slide to the right where it says end, the red button that says end.
It says leave.
Yes. Click that button and it should give you two choices, whether you want you want to end the meeting or whether you just want to end.
Okay. So
So
which one should I pick?
You will pick end for everybody or end
Oh,
the
all in
meeting.
for everybody. Okay.
Yeah, end meeting for all is what you want to click.
you're all washed up. You're finished.
We're all up.
UP.
We're all UPs.
This particular reading is UP.
See you next week, guys.
That's
Okay,
So
fine.
do you see-
everybody.
Do you see that, Katrina? Do you see it? Oh, okay. I'll have to click the end meeting for all. See you all.
Duncan, before you go, it's the Monday for the book club Dubliners. It's 1 o'clock our time, right?
Yes, if you're on Central Time, basically.
It's
It's
2:46
just like
where I live.
just like today.
Got it. Perfect. Thank you.
Okay.